In this exercise, I'm going to show you how to create a repeating tile pattern inside of Illustrator, and not surprisingly, we're going to apply that tile pattern to our stylized Aztec calendar. So I've gone ahead and saved my progress so far as multifilleyes.ai found inside the 07 fill stroke folder, and I'm going to switch out to the wide view of this illustration, and notice this big expanse of brown that surrounds the central portion of the calendar, and it's punctuated only by the spikes of these 8-pointed stars as well as the occasional appearance of 2 blue inset rectangles. And I want to jazz things up because that's a little bit flat for my taste. If you've ever seen those Tonal Pohualli calendars, they are incredibly intricate. And so I want to come up with this. This is the final calendar.ai file, and notice it has a tile pattern in that formerly brown zone. And if you take a close look at that pattern, you'll recognize that group of flowers that we created for the tile artwork in the previous chapter. And so I've actually saved a version of that artwork for you inside the 07 fill stroke folder. It's this guy right here. It's called beveledtiles.ai. And what I'd like you to do is go ahead and click on one of the clusters of the flowers, either on the right-hand tile or the left-hand tile or top or bottom. Click with the black arrow tool to select them. And you know what? That doesn't work. Why is that? Let's switch to the layers panel, and you can see that the drawing layer is locked. All right, so go ahead and unlock it, and then go ahead and click on one of these clusters of 4 flowers in order to select them. All right, now I'm going to go up to the Edit menu, and I'm going to choose the Copy command, or press Control-C, Command-C on the Mac. Now I'm going to switch to the wide view of my multifilleyes.ai file, and I'm going to paste the flowers into this illustration by going up to the Edit menu and choosing the Paste command. I don't care where these flowers land, it doesn't matter. Positioning is unimportant for this. Control-V, Command-V on the Mac. Well, positioning is unimportant, so it figures that the flowers landed right in the god's face. So I'm going to go ahead and move the flowers to a different location. And I'll also press Control-H or Command-H on the Mac to hide those anchor points so I can see what I'm doing here. Now, notice that the basic shape that's defined by these flowers is a diamond as opposed to a square. So when you're creating tile patterns in the first place, they have to fit inside of an upright square or inside of a perpendicular rectangle. So everything's going to be straight up and down. Later, you can rotate the pattern if you want to, but for now, it's going to be upright. So let's go ahead and rotate this pattern by double-clicking on the Rotate tool inside the toolbox. That'll bring up the Rotate dialog box. I'll change the angle value to 45 degrees. That's great. And click OK. And now our flowers are upright as we see them here. Now, the one other change I want to make is that whole weak versus rich black thing. This is very easy to forget. But if you go to the color panel, you'll see that the stroke is active, and indeed we have a weak black because we weren't concerned about weak versus rich blacks back in the previous chapter. Now we are. I'm going to switch over to swatches once again, and I'm going to change that stroke to rich black. That'll just darken things up incrementally because otherwise these things would look very out of place with the rest of our artwork. Now, you can get really wrapped up in defining tile patterns inside of Illustrator. You can create patterns that repeat seamlessly from one tile to the next, in which case you have to define the boundaries of the tile and go through a bunch of additional steps that would take me, frankly, about an hour to explain to you. It's fairly involved. However, the basics of creating a tile pattern are wicked easy, and that's what we're going to focus on right now. I'm going to switch to the black arrow tool. And then I'm going to drag the flowers and drop them into the swatches panel. And you'll see that you create a new swatch, which is a pattern swatch. In my case, it comes up as new pattern swatch 5. In your case, it may come up as new pattern swatch 1. It doesn't matter. We're going to rename it. To rename the pattern swatch, you double click on it. But if you so much as click right now, notice those flowers look a little weird now. And if I switch to the zoomed in view and scroll up there, you'll see that they look quite strange indeed. Notice I can see my selection handles in this alternative view into the illustration. All right, I'm going to press Control-H, Command-H to hide them once again, however, and notice that what we've done is we've taken the flowers and we filled them with a tile pattern of flowers. And the two are not exactly in alignment with each other, so it looks just interesting, but not what we want. So I'll press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac to undo the application of that fill pattern. Then I'll press Control-H or Command-H on the Mac to see that those flowers are selected. I'll click off of them in order to deselect them. Then I'll come up to the swatches panel and double click on that new swatch, and I'll call it flower pattern because after all, that's what it is. And then I'll click OK. All right, now we've created the pattern. How do we apply it to our illustration? Well, let's go back to the wide view of the illustration like so. And I'm going to click on the perimeter of this brown circle. But I don't see the selection handles because the selection edges are turned off inside of this illustration. So I'll press Control H or Command H on the Mac to bring back the selection edges. And now I can see that I have indeed selected this brown circle. And I'm going to switch over to the color panel and click on the fill just to make sure it's active. And by the way, when you apply a tile pattern, it's going to go to the fill automatically. But I just want you to see something that can go wrong here. All right, so the fill is active. I go to swatches. It is indeed a brown fill. By the way, notice that. It's that imported cocoa fill. And I know that because there's the swatch, imported cocoa. And now I'm going to switch it out for flower pattern. And now flower pattern appears to be selected, and yet it appears nowhere inside the illustration window. What's going on? Well, this is one of the potential downsides of assigning multiple fills to objects inside of Illustrator. As long as you keep those multiple fills going and you pay attention to what you're doing, it's great. But every once in a while, you may create duplicate fills that aren't actually serving any purpose. I'll switch over to the Appearance panel and notice that I do have two fills, and I've got a brown fill sitting on top of the tile pattern. So if I press Control Z or Command Z on the Mac to undo the application of that tile pattern, I can see that I had two exactly identical brown fills going on. So I want to get rid of one of them. I could just drag it to the trash can, of course. I could grab this fill, drag it to the trash. But here's another thing you can do. Let's say you've got a bunch of junk assigned to an object and you just want to pare it down to one stroke, one fill, nothing more. Inside the Appearance panel, you go ahead and click on the flyout menu icon and you choose Reduce to Basic Appearance, not Clear Appearance, because if you do that, you'll have no fill and no stroke. They'll both change to none. Instead, what you want is Reduce to Basic Appearance, and that leaves you with one stroke and one fill and nothing more. No special opacity values, no special live effects like transform, just a fill and a stroke. All right, now let's change the fill by going up to the Swatches panel, or as long as we're inside the Appearance panel, I can just click on this fill swatch and I can select the flower pattern. Notice that the flowers appear against a black background. And you may wonder, well, why is it black? Why aren't we seeing through to page white the way we do with the original flowers up here in the upper right-hand corner of the illustration? And the reason is because there's a black object behind them. If you click just slightly down from this object, or even better, just go up to the Select menu, choose Next Object below, or press Control-Alt left bracket, Command-Option left bracket on the Mac. You will see that there is an object that's filled with black. I'll go ahead and press the Backspace key in order to get rid of it, just for a moment, the Delete key on the Mac, and you can see how now the beige circle in back of the flower pattern is visible. So just so you have a sense of where that's coming from, what we want to do is cover up that blackness, which I'll restore by pressing Control-Z, Command-Z on the Mac, because it's a kind of shadow inside the calendar right now. We want to cover up that blackness using a second fill inside of that same tile pattern circle. All right, so I'm going to go up to the Select menu, and this time I'll choose Next Object above, Control-Alt right bracket, Command-Option right bracket on the Mac, and that goes ahead and selects a circle that contains the flower pattern. There it is. And I will add a new fill by clicking on the Add New Fill icon here at the bottom of the Appearance panel. And now we have two flower fills. That's not what we want, of course. So I'll switch to the bottommost of the two, because after all, this fill, the tile pattern right there, is covering up this fill at bottom. So I'll go ahead and click the down pointing arrowhead and I'll switch to green, like so. And we end up getting this effect right there. And that, my friends, is how you create and apply tile patterns inside Illustrator.